All right, let's get started, shall we? I'm excited. I'm here to talk about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl and Sir Orfeo, as translated by J.R.R. Tolkien, one of my favorites. It's pretty interesting. I've never actually read this before. I've known about it. I just never really got around to it. So I finally decided I was going to sit down and do it. And it's pretty cool. It's written by an unknown medieval poet, but Tolkien translated it. So this was someone in the vein of like Chaucer. So it was written in Old English, so it needed to be translated. And even with the translation, still some of these words, it's like I've never heard or seen, but I understand them from the general context. I have a familiarity with like Shakespeare and some Old English. And the good thing, there is also a glossary in the back, so you can reference that. But I honestly don't think it's too difficult to follow. It might take a little focus, but the story though, honestly, it just pulled me in, so it didn't really matter strictly how it was written. But I think Tolkien did a great job of translating it and telling this story that I've never heard before. It's a King Arthur legend. I always wanted to check it out too, because I always thought this cover looked really cool. But that being said, it's a great story. It's full of like adventure, and it's mysterious, and it's full of nobility and chasteness and knighthood and what all that means, you know. And I think sometimes we romanticize that in a way that it's too childish or something. It's like that, oh, that's only for children. But I don't think so. I think they're very important stories, and I think when told right, man, it's just inspiring, and so like it filled me up when I read it, and it gave me hope, man, which is great. Anytime a story can do that, like, I take notice for sure. But I'll give you a little summary of the poems in it. We'll start with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I'll, try not to reveal everything, because I obviously encourage you to read it. That's why I'm kind of doing this review. I should say before I talk about all of these poems that there's probably spoilers / I might get some things wrong context and story-wise, so just please forgive me and read it for yourself, because it's worth it, and like I'll probably reread it again and have a better understanding. So onward. So Gawain and the Green Knight, it's all about King Arthur and his court. That's where it starts, and they're celebrating. It's Christmas time, so they're feasting and singing and all these things, and then they start to have Christmas games. So I'm already in it. I love Christmas personally, so I was like, man, these are my people. So anyway, I like the way it's described, and how they just were filled with, such mirth and like merriment around each other. And so as they do this, the Green Knight shows up out of nowhere, and it's this dark moment. It's like, what is going on? Because no one knows who he is. He's completely green. He comes up and he approaches King Arthur, and he wants to join in the Christmas games. So he issues a challenge. And the point of his challenge is he wants King Arthur and his court to prove that they're as noble and chaste and just as they seem to be, because he's doubting that. And he, throughout the land, people tell the stories of King Arthur and all this stuff, and he basically wants to put it to the test and see if they're really as good as it's claimed that they are. So the challenge essentially is a one strike for one strike. So King Arthur would have the chance to swing a blow at the Green Knight and kill him, and if he failed, the Green Knight would then get a chance to swing once at him and try and kill him. They're like, this is really odd. Who is this guy? Well, Sir Gawain is the nephew of King Arthur. He decides the king shouldn't have to put up with this. This is his kingdom. Who is this guy coming in here with this challenge? And it's also a chance, because he was young and he knew it, and he was amongst the other knights, and he hadn't really been tested himself yet and really put through any kind of like trial or adventure to show that he is who he knew himself to be inside. And I think part of it too is he wanted to know. Gawain wants to know if he is capable, if he is courageous, if he can basically hang with the other knights. So he tells Arthur, like, let me do this. And so he says, okay. Basically, he cuts his head off, but then the Green Knight doesn't die. He starts laughing. He picks up his head and he says, a year from now, you have to come find me and we'll finish this. I won't get into too much more of the plot, other than to say a year goes around and Sir Gawain does not forget, and he does. He goes out on this journey. Tolkien briefly describes kind of the adventures that he goes on, how he faces certain monsters and fought things, and to get to this place where he rested in this kingdom. And then once he rested there for a while, then he finally got information from those people where the Green Knight was, because he couldn't find him for a long time. And then he goes to face the Green Knight. I love this story about knighthood and testing yourself against trials, against things that try to strike fear into you, and facing temptation, and how we go through those things and how we come out the other side. The next poems in there are Pearl and Sir Orfeo. And forgive me, guys, if I misspeak on some of these plot lines, if I get them a little messed up here. I think some of this also is kind of open to interpretation, but Pearl is, I believe, about this man who has lost his child. And it starts with him, and he's in this land, and he goes to this, I think it's a waterfall, and a little kind of like a spring or something, and he sees this girl there, this little girl. He views her. I don't think her name is Pearl, but she is like a pearl, something like that. But I think he realizes that this is his lost child. And so it's like he's having a vision, or at least he thinks it's a vision, or he's questioning if she's there in spirit or something. And they have kind of this dialogue in this conversation, and there's a lot of talk about beauty and romance, and again, her being like a pearl, and innocence in that. And it's really cool too, because again, this idea of just desiring the right things in your life, and learning how to grieve over the things that you lose, but to not worship those things, and to keep our eyes on God and on Jesus. Because she talks about the pearl, she talks about how she's with Christ now, and how she is his bride, and how we are all the bride of Christ, if you're a servant and a follower. He, I think, in this poem tends to kind of romanticize her and misses her, and she kind of warns him, hey, don't let your love for me supersede your love for Christ. She's like, I'm okay. She's like, I know you miss me. I could be messing that up, so please forgive me if I am, but that's at least what I got out of it. And the language in it is very beautiful, and I think it's a great read if you want to process some kind of loss or grief or pain in your life. I think it's a great way to understand that God has everything under control. So, great poem. The next one, Sir Orfeo, it's got some of those themes in it as well, but I think it's a little bit more fun. It's a little bit more of almost like an adventure, it's kind of scary at first. But so Sir Orfeo is the king of this land. This fairy king comes and warns that he's gonna steal the queen, and they're all like, absolutely not. They set up all these precautions. Well, it happens anyway. Through their fairy magic, they steal the queen. So the king is distraught, and he is really upset. So he tells his right-hand man, basically, hey, I'm gonna go find her, and I trust you to look after the kingdom. When I come back, I'll rule again, but I've got to go do this. And so he's like, absolutely, we trust you, we love you, you should do this. So he goes and he searches for it, and I think it's years. I'm not entirely sure. I want to say 10 years, but it takes him a long time. He searches. Long story short, he gets back to the kingdom, eventually gets the kingdom back. Sir Orfeo is a lot of fun. It's really interesting. And as a whole, the whole book, the whole read is just really good. I personally love the language in it. It's one of those things where, again, it's like, yeah, man, why not? Why can't we act like this stuff is gone or something, or dead sometimes, or it was only for that time. And it's like, absolutely not. This is how we should be living right now. So a couple of things I wanted to drive home is we need more stories like this, and we should be reading stories like this. So if you haven't read it, I highly encourage you. I think that it will encourage you, that it will uplift you, that it will give you insight. And these are things that people, we think about now, but I think this generation, this age, this culture, we're just so distracted. And so I'm not trying to put any blame on anybody or point any fingers, but I get it, we have computers in our pockets, basically. We have these smartphones, and we have the internet, and we have all these ways of just constantly communicating, constantly looking somewhere else than being quiet, stilling ourselves and pondering, or taking the time to study and to read and to listen to what these people so long ago have to say, and have to say to they had to say it to each other, and they have, like, I think it's important things that they have to say to us, because it's things that we can look back at and learn from, like, oh, these are things that people went through, these are things that people were concerned about, these are things that brought people through generations. We can take that now into our modern day lives and either like see how that fits in, or if it's just not fitting in at all, why, and ask these questions. So yeah, read this book, and then like I said, we just need more stories like it. So if you have a story that's similar, I encourage you to tell that, whether that's writing it as a book, a poem, in a movie. If you're making, just social media content, put things that are, important to us as spiritual and physical beings, put that out into the world in a way that will encourage people and draw them to truth and to Christ. And I think people are they're afraid of how they'll be perceived if they do something like that. But man, if you speak the truth in love, if you do it with a story that makes sense to your generation, it can set people free. And I know I say things like that fairly often, but it's true, man. Jesus spoke in parables because, like, we couldn't understand the mysteries of God straightforwardly. Sometimes they're complex, but by his grace, he knew a way to communicate those things to us, that we could think on those things and that they would get deep inside us. And then the mysteries, the revelation comes, and then we know how to act it out. We know how to be courageous. We know how to be chaste and noble, and to love others, and to fight for others, and to go on quests and journeys, and to do things that are scary, and to face the battles and the monsters. I know, again, we're talking about like knighthood and like fairy tales and stuff and whatever, but there's a really important reason, because sometimes I think that we think we don't have anything to worry about. And that's true. If you relinquish everything in your life, you submit it to God. But God calls us to do things to bring his kingdom. And so, it's very real that we have to face things sometimes in life, and we need encouragement, and we need to be people of character and noble, and we need to be knightly. So anyway, if you got a story like that, highly recommend you to share it. Last point I really want to make is read this if you get the chance, and also read stories like it. Read things that challenge you, whether that's literally the way it's written, because it's like Old English, or things that, again, you just don't fully understand, or you're trying to. And like I said, deep down in me, I know, like, I want to be knightly. I want to be an honorable person. I want to have character. I want to have a code of conduct and morals, and that people can, hopefully, if they know me, recognize that. And if someone doesn't know me, hopefully someone can vouch for me and say, this is how he lives his life. And ultimately, all of that pointing back to Jesus, back to, our Savior. So I highly encourage you to read things that challenge you, because you'll get better, at reading things like, whether that's Old English or poetry or whatever. If you're not used to it, you'll get better at it, and it'll make it easier as you read other things and you study, and it will challenge who you are and how you live your life. And hopefully that will embolden you to want to live in a way that will be honorable, a way that will encourage people, a way that will love people, again, and just inspire people to do the same. And all of that is because of who Jesus is. Yeah, so I highly encourage you to read this book. I encourage you to get other people to read it and to get excited about, life and the adventure that it is. I really hope that this video brought value to you. If it did, please let me know. I'm really excited to build community with all of you. I want to hear your thoughts, whether you like this video or not. That's totally fine. I'm hopefully going to be reviewing more books in the future, so if you like that, please let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.